All right, so we are live here. This is what used to be called the Duff Daddy Experience, and now we actually shifted the name. This is kind of breaking news to Spiritual Fuckboy. So welcome to the first episode of Spiritual Fuckboy. I am that. I am him. I am Duff Daddy 100, Ben Duffy. And I'm joined by one of my good friends, David Redish. We went to school together, to grad school at Naropa in the Contemplative Psychotherapy program. And we just graduated in May. So both of us are now actively practicing psychotherapists. And Naropa University, just for some background, it's a Buddhist university founded by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, which is who was a Tibetan teacher who came to the West and did many things, created Shambhala, sort of a overarching Buddhist company, publishing company, as well as Naropa, which is a Buddhist-inspired university that we both went to. And so a lot of people ask, like, oh, that sounds so cool. How was it? And if we're being honest, it was an interesting experience. Let's just put it like that. Yeah. And I want to give you the floor, David. I want you to describe what was your experience like in Naropa?
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations on the new name. Yeah, Spiritual Fuckboy. Really rolls off the tongue. It sounds nice. It does. It's catchy. Naropa. Yeah. Is a unique experience for higher education, graduate school, master's degree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm curious too, like what drew you there? But I know for me, I was already in Boulder. I kept hearing about Naropa, like ecstatic dances and stuff. And I thought people were talking about some kind of like spiritual community or something like. I was like, I don't know what Naropa
sort of is.
And then was like, maybe I want to change careers. Maybe I want to be a psychotherapist. Long story short, my friend's like, you should check out Naropa. And so I started looking at it and I'm like, yeah, experiential learning, cohort model, Buddhism. Let's go. Mm-hmm. I didn't really think too much harder. Maybe I should have, but I just went for it.
So what was your background before you came to Naropa?
Yeah, well, career-wise, filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, commercial director, producer. So a lot of time spent in Los Angeles. I used to have a company based in Texas and lived in Austin. So it was all around like being an artist, creative, hustling in that like advertising world. And then through the pandemic, it just was less and less of a fit overall. I was really burnt out, started doing some coaching, doing more men's work, started leading some retreats, working with plant medicine on my own and then with others. And I just felt like I should find a career path in this and maybe a therapist is one way in. So I just started going for it.
Yeah. Beautiful. So you had the call to service, to become a therapist and to go to this Buddhist university. And again, so what a interesting, like people I'm sure have the image of like, what is a Buddhist university? What does that mean? And so for me, it's founded on Buddhist principles, including honestly something that's been incredibly transformative for me, which is the understanding of emptiness. And this is not just an esoteric idea. It's an understanding that when it sinks, it changes everything in your life. You become enlightened. You become really just deeply in tune. You come to a deep understanding of the mind, how it's constructing things. And so those sort of teachings and insights are sort of interwoven into the experience at Naropa. So for instance, we did a 2-week meditation retreat every semester at what's called the Drala Mountain Campus.
Drala Mountain Center.
Drala Mountain Center up in Red Feather Lakes up in northern Colorado. Beautiful location, beautiful land. Incredibly, I mean, how could you not learn a lot about yourself, about how you interact with others, how you want to engage with the world when you're just, again, on retreat for 2 weeks twice a year. So that's one way that Naropa was different.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, gosh, so many ways. I think that it's different than what I was anticipating. Happy for what it was though. I think I wasn't looking for a bunch of, multiple choice tests and quizzes and testing my knowledge in that way. I wanted this more, can you retain information and then practice with it?
Exactly. So less of, again, test taking. Am I going to get an A or whatever? Naropa's grading system is hilarious. Let's just put it like that. Like if you're in Naropa, you're probably going to pass. You got to really fuck up to not pass that shit. So it's like,
come to class, try.
Okay. Show up and try. Which is dope, especially when you're getting an LPC and you're getting a full fucking license to practice therapy. It's pretty chill. So pros and cons to that, let's be honest. But what I really want to talk about with Naropa, and I think this is an overarching experience in academia and really in the global culture, the global Western culture, is what I will generally describe as wokeness, as really an expression of separation and duality between groups of people. And especially in a psychotherapy grad program, it becomes very extreme. It becomes very polarized. And that is such a potent place to work because that's where a lot of the healing can occur. In our cohort, that didn't happen. We ended up in this place where, again, we're sort of in a gridlock where there are certain people that see us, especially like pretty fuckboy white male like myself, as the Antichrist. Like there's a lot of projection and a lot of you're a racist. You're like sort of what's wrong with the world. And I will accept that there's, of course, ingrained racism in the culture that we're swimming in. Absolutely. And that's something that should not be denied and needs to be examined. But then to take it a step further and have it be a personal attack on me when I'm like, yo, what did I do? Like literally, I'm here, I'm open, I'm trying to have a conversation and it can't happen because there's so much charge emotionally speaking.
Yeah. Well, I think the cohort model is, in a way, especially within the kind of Trump way of thinking, it's sort of designed to like work with whatever comes up, which from almost all cohorts is going to bring shit up, right? There's this term of like pseudo community. Was that the term? And I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and that pseudo community is basically like inspirations for strangers. It's like,
can you say more to that?
Inspirations for strangers. Yeah. It's just like, if I don't really know you and I see you and I'm like, you seem cool and you look, I'm like, man, you're killing it. You look awesome. You should keep going. I'm like, I don't know anything about your life.
Right.
You know, I think about my clients I work with and I'm like, yes, I will offer them inspiration, especially if it's appropriate, it's natural, it's like forthcoming. But I also notice it sometimes in being like, man, I really want to lift their spirits. I'm like, that's not my fucking job.
Yeah.
You know, it's my job to make sure they're going to be okay as much as one other person can, but it's not my job to like pump them up.
Yeah.
So the pseudo community thing of like inspirations for strangers, kumbaya kind of vibe, that doesn't exist when you're in a true cohort model.
Yeah.
And we were, like you said, as soon as you were talking about it, I'm like gridlock. And then you said it because that's what happened.
So just to let people know what the cohort model is at Naropa in the Contemplative program, we're in a cohort model. And what that means is that we have no electives. We are all in the same classes. We all do the 2-week retreats together, always. So you are surrounded by these same people for 3 years. In every class, with every context, with every shift in everyone's life. It's a psychotherapy grad program. So you're learning quite a lot about people, about how they respond, react, their really karma, honestly. And you have no escape. That's the thing. You have no escape. You enter this pressure cooker. Like you normally, you know, you don't like somebody and you're like, kind of fuck them. I'm going to sit on the other side of the room. There's like 30 people in our class. You know what I mean?
Every
so
class,
like every class.
person.
So you can't avoid people. You can't avoid conflict, even when people really don't like you. So that is that pressure cooker that leads to so much growth and transformation, but it's fucking raw. It's fucking raw.
Well, and I think some people are going to grow and transform in that setting, and some people are going to become more rigid and more solidified. And that was noticeable. I mean, it was noticeable within everyone, but you know, I think, like you said, you were villainized. I think I was too in ways, and in some ways I just ignored it or didn't let too much of that, you know, get on me, but it was certainly happening. It was impacting how I was participating, whether I consciously knew it or not. That's unfortunate. That goes against this whole idea of like, yeah, we need to know racism within the culture and society, how it shows up. But then when we're in this 30-person group and a few people keep getting pointed at as like, you're the fucking problem. And then that dynamic is not really addressed of like, hey, we can't just keep pointing out one person.
Right.
Like, even if they were a problem in that moment, like let's work through that. It wasn't like that. It was like this one note, keep getting hit.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that's not learning. That's not growth. That's actually painful. And a lot of people suffered because of it.
Yeah. And it's that feeling of being stuck where we can't have difficult conversations because it's too much. And I get it. Some of these things are extremely charged. We're talking about sexism, racism, wealth inequality. These are the big fucking topics that we're all grappling with in today's world, obviously. And I'll say firsthand, we're all impacted by these systems of inequality. yes, I have privilege as a white man. I recognize that and I see that. But I want to come to a place of deeper understanding. And if I feel like I'm so villainized that I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard, I'm not being valued in what I have to offer, because I'm a human being and I have shit to say and shit to offer. We hit this gridlock where it seemed to me experientially where this group of people had this belief where if you're not with us in the way that we want you to be with us, then you're against us. And for me, from my perspective, I'm like, no. We're all in this together. I think racism's fucked. I think sexism is evil. And I think we all actually reap those painful kind of consequences from those systems. So like, yes, let's try to figure this out. But I guess really when it comes down to it, when there is charge like that, it's very painful to go into those topics. And that's the work that needs to happen, is to step into that discomfort. But it takes two to tango, right? So if people are not comfortable with that, we can't push them. But then we're at this gridlock where we're trapped in our own view, our own narrative and story of good, bad, right, wrong. I'm right, they're wrong, obviously. And we don't get any connection, transparency, the ability for somebody to see the other side. So that was an interesting experience in Naropa, to the point where, okay, so we're having lectures for hours. Professor asks a question and nobody raises their hand. And these are 3-hour lectures. So brutal. No one raised their hand. They're like, okay, anyways, I would just remember, if I raise my hand, I'll answer the question. Oh, no one's gonna answer. I guess I will do that enough. And they'll be like, or somebody will say, I just want to notice who's answering these questions. It's the cisgendered white male. And I'm like, yeah, that's facts. But guess what? There was not another soul in this room who's willing to do it. And so like, what do? I guess I just don't speak. And I guess then nobody speaks. Is that worth $500 a fucking lecture? Bro, what am I learning here? And it was an interesting experience. If you can, as the listener, maybe just put yourself in our shoes for a second. It's kind of a what the fuck is going on sort of experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we got our LPCCs out of it. So congratulations, sir.
To you too.
But yeah, Naropa, pros and cons. There's pros and cons. And I think it just really depends on the mixture of people that you get in the cohort. Because I've heard from other cohorts that it's like their family and they love it and they learn so much. And I'm like, and I think the impact of that experience will ripple into my life over years, decades, you know? But yeah, it was a really interesting experience, and David and I made it out. We made it out. So yeah, how do you feel about that now looking back?
Yeah, I was like, as we're talking about, I'm thinking about, yeah, we made it out. We made it out alive. Now we're in the world doing our thing. I mean, I say it on almost a daily basis. Every day since walking across that stage, graduating, like my nervous system is more relaxed and more relaxed. That 3 years, right? For me, that journey was like, I had 2 kids, moved, like basically was getting ready to sell a house.
David is a new father, by the way, relatively new.
Yeah.
How old are your kids?
So my daughter's 3.5, my son's 1.5.
Mm-hmm. And you had both of these kids while we were actually in the program.
Yeah. Well, my daughter was born like 3-4 months before we started.
Mm-hmm.
So newborn. And then my son was born like right in the middle of it. So like my wife was pregnant during that journey, and it was, I didn't know how hard it was until now. Do you know what I mean? It was I was like the fish boiling in the water. Like it was just so intense that
the frog in the water.
The frog in the water.
Right.
It was
intense. What's that allegory if people don't know it, or that?
I mean, what is it? It's like a frog as the water slowly
I think it's like if you
boil.
put a frozen, I'm not sure. It's an interesting allegory, but I think if you put a frozen frog I put a live frog, not frozen.
A live frog, yeah.
In boiling water, it'll instantly jump out. But if you put a frog in room temp water and then slowly heat it up, the frog actually won't notice and will be cooked alive. Yeah. So you didn't even notice how wrecked your nervous system was getting.
I mean, I guess I did, but I didn't have a choice. You said, we were stuck, and granted, at any time I could have left. I had given myself this caveat of like, the door's always open. Like first semester we went, I'm like, if this isn't a good fit, I'll just bail. But then as we went every semester, that door got more and more close to the point where I'm like, I'm in. I mean, what am I going to do now?
I mean, at Naropa, like it's such niche classes. These credits are not going to transfer to like a normal grad program. So like, and like, what are we paying? Like $30K a semester? What is
a
it?
year.
30K a year?
Yeah.
So at that point, when you're just, they got you by the balls, like quite literally. What are you gonna do? These credits aren't gonna transfer, motherfucker. You're not going anywhere. but yeah.
But it's good. And so now, yeah, I have so much experience to draw from. That's not like, oh, I know how to do DBT perfectly or ACT or any of these like acronyms and, or I'm a this kind of therapist or I'm a that. It's like, I'm a contemplative therapist, right? So we both were in this contemplative program. What does that mean? I mean, it's pretty like spacious, really. When my clients go like, oh, I wanted like a Buddhist therapist. I see that that's what you do. What does that mean? And I'm like, I try to keep it really simple. I'm like, I work with spaciousness. I would try to keep us in the present moment. I believe everything's interconnected, interrelated. Nothing is existing in a vacuum. Your life, my life, what's happening right here in the session, what happens between the sessions. So just, I could go deeper into all these other teachings that are there. And I have a couple of clients that have been showing up and they want those teachings. And so then it gets edgy of like, I'm not really like a Buddhist scholar or teacher, but I'm like, I'll just tell you how I practice with it because that's working for me. And then you can try it on.
That's how great teachers are formed. It really is. And yeah, I think this is a good segue into a broader conversation about psychotherapy. So you talked about contemplative psychotherapy and what that is to you. And so we both got our degree in, again, so the full name of the program was Contemplative Psychotherapy and Buddhist Psychology. And so like you said, contemplative psychotherapy, it integrates these Buddhist concepts and practices such as spaciousness, interconnectedness. And I want you to maybe explain what that means to you, those topics. So you said spaciousness, interconnectedness, and something else.
I'm going to say spaciousness, interconnectedness, interrelated, kind of same thing.
Spaciousness, interconnectedness.
I mean, that we could.
Those are good places to start.
Pick a piece of one of those and be good. Well, and you touched on it earlier too, like mentioning emptiness, right? And I think spaciousness, emptiness, different thing, but kind of like rooted in the same idea. We'll just go with spaciousness for now. But for me, spaciousness with clients is really like, how can we bring room around the intensity that's coming up in their life, which could be like positively intense or negatively. Usually people come to therapy because life is becoming challenging or difficult or relationships are messy. Sometimes it's like, life's so good. And I'm like, great, let's bring space for that. And so space meaning like, let's take time with what this is. Yeah. How does it feel in your body? Like what emotions come up? What can you see about yourself? Like, can you get out of your own limited perspective and like come over here a little bit to the side and like see what's happening in your life? Like that's, to me, that's spaciousness, practicing outside of your limited perspective.
Totally. And I think spaciousness, the reason it's important, because a lot of our trauma or our pain and suffering, if you actually pay close attention, you notice the mind is very tight around certain stories, around certain experiences, around certain narratives. The mind, when we're in suffering, kind of shrink wraps around things. It contracts. And all of a sudden there's no spaciousness where all I can focus on is all the ways my life is fucked. Because there's so much resistance there, so much contraction. And so when we hear, as a therapist, when we're with clients and we're hearing people share their really painful experiences or their really painful present moment experience, actually a lot of healing can occur just by holding space. Not running, not saying, oh, let me fix you. Yeah, this is definitely fucked up. Let's try to figure this out. If you actually don't just innately try to fix them off the bat, you hold space for their experience of anger, grief, dissatisfaction, whatever it is, you are the one to hold that container. And when there's spaciousness there, you give someone the permission to experience that. And when you're giving someone permission, when they feel they have permission, actually, you're injecting space into the story. Where the story is now more workable. Maybe I can focus on the positive in my life even, instead of getting, again, hypnotized by the negative, really, through that spaciousness.
100%. And the spaciousness, right, is in a way, it's working like to lessen the attachment or to be more unattached, right? Because when we're attached, that's that like shrink wrap you're talking about, where things just, there's no room to see what's happening at any other level. It's just, this is my reality. This is how I feel. This is how I'm going to act, right? Just feeling, thought, behavior, like it all becomes this constant cycle. And it's like, how do you teach someone to slow down? And like you said, you just have to kind of embody it. And in holding space for somebody else, right? There's potential that they can start to learn what that is because they feel it.
they hold space for themselves.
Yeah.
So as a psychotherapist, we're in a shared experience in a one-on-one session with a client where our energy bodies are quite literally merged. Like if they're sobbing, how do you not feel that? I mean, unless your heart is completely calloused over. So when you're in that place and someone is sharing maybe, violence, sexual trauma that they've experienced in their lives, again, can I hold that? Can I hold what they're sharing with me? Because if I can do it, and this can be something somebody's like, again, avoided or ran from their whole life because it's painful. When you can hold it and not break contact with them, stay with them, then actually you're giving them permission to feel, giving them permission. Oh, this grief, this unfairness, this feeling of being a victim, this is okay here. And when we have that, again, spaciousness, people can let those emotions flow. We still hold space. We still, don't continue this cycle of contraction and saying this is not acceptable. We come to a place where this is acceptable, no matter what the client is bringing. And that is innately healing. And again, it's like the mind ruminates. It spins and it spins, remembering all the things that are not resolved. All the ways that there's still a lack of a conclusion here, and the mind is trying to find a resolution. That's why it's spinning. So when you come to this place, something like grief can really be that resolution. Something like, screaming into a pillow, punching the floor. These are things, these are releases, the ability to fully feel. And all of a sudden people can get back into their bodies and start to integrate trauma instead of having it be that metaphorical thorn in their side forever.
Yeah. I think the piece with trauma too is really interesting, in that was something I really wanted to learn more about, like how to work with trauma. And when I came to Naropa, I was like, I hope I'm going to get this teaching and learning. And I think I did it, but it was never explicit. It was like through little side conversations with the faculty or like a teaching assistant here. But I really like this insight that I got, and I wonder if you relate to it. But first it was like, go slow with trauma, with yourself, with others, with your clients. And then I'm a visual learner. So this teacher had given me a really nice visual of, once you or the client can kind of pinpoint what the trauma is, whether it's like specific or general, but like, this is what it is. And especially if you can name it, like where it is in the body, if they feel it in a certain place, like on their heart, now like you're basically orbiting it, like through conversation, through somatic directing, just through being with them, and like keeping a safe like perimeter until they're ready to like move a little closer. And maybe it gets a little intense. Okay, move a little away until eventually, basically you're orbiting like right next to the surface of what that is. And in that, it's like that heal it to feel it phrase that people say, but
feel it to heal it.
Feel it to heal it.
I actually haven't heard that, but it's like super on point.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's true. I think the difficulty is like, do we feel safe enough to be like right up against that shitty, traumatic, awful thing that like is continuing to echo and our mind's trying to figure out long enough to start to like change that perspective, bring space.
And I love that you say that, like feeling is healing. Because a lot of the times when we have, trauma, any sort of pain, even minor discomfort, we separate ourselves from it. We actually push it away. And that actually fragments the being. There's something that's not integrated. And actually then we're like, something's wrong. What is it? It's actually our fragmentation. The fact that we are not comfortable connecting with pain, with suffering, with things like feelings of failure, feelings of lack, not measuring up, feelings of confusion. The reason it's so bad is because we're disconnecting from them. And interestingly, and there's many ways we disconnect. It can be alcohol, drugs, sex. It can be overworking. It can be isolation. All these ways that we try to protect ourselves from actually feeling. And that's the thing, when we have all these very strong protectors, we're shielding the heart. And then I get clients who, they can't feel joy, they can't feel happiness because they're not willing to feel grief. They're not willing to feel anger, and because the heart is closed. So a lot of our work as psychotherapists is sort of guiding people back into feeling, back into connecting with the feeling, even when it hurts. Because really, it's not so much the feeling. I mean, the feelings are painful, let's put it like that. But it's our resistance. It's our avoidance. The fact that we're always running from this thing that really fucking hurts. And yeah, so it really is an honor as a psychotherapist to be, helping people with this. And like you said, it can be extremely intense to go into those traumatic stories and experiences. And actually, what makes it so intense is the degree that we are resisting those stories. because a Buddhist teacher, Shinzen Young, actually says that our experience of suffering is equivalent to the pain we experience multiplied by how much we choose to resist that pain. So interestingly, if I'm resisting a traumatic experience, let's say a violent car accident, I'm saying that doesn't fit my story. That's not okay. If I die, that's not good. And when we have that resistance, all of a sudden the story gets very real. It gets very tight. It's the only thing we can feel and only thing we can experience. And yeah, really at that point, we have separated ourselves from that trauma, from that pain, which is trying to tell you something actually. Because for me, I think like discomfort, it has messages inherently in it, trying to keep you safe, trying to keep you protected, trying to guide you. And we're disconnecting ourselves from pain and also disconnecting ourselves from probably important messages. And again, I want to highlight that's our resistance to the pain that is amplifying exponentially our suffering. And what happens, and people listening, please apply this to your life in any place that you are suffering. Just ask the question, am I resisting something here? Am I resisting pain? Just open the question. You don't have to stop resisting, but just ask, am I? And see what happens. See maybe where you go or maybe where you could let go. So I'm curious what you have to say about that.
I mean, totally. I almost want to be like, where am I resisting? Is like really the question, because like we know that we always are in different ways.
Totally.
And then, yeah, I say always, like we can have moments where we aren't. I think that's kind of until we become fully enlightened, and then it's just all the time open. But, you know, in the times where we're not, you know, or in the times where we are resisting, you know, just noticing like, where can I relax a little bit more? You know, it's something I always like when I'm doing ketamine sessions with clients. I'm inviting them in the beginning that when they meet resistance, especially if they're like really deep in it and we're not gonna be able to talk, because like the way that medicine works is like it takes you into the experience.
Intravenous?
This is sublingual.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's moderate dose, but at the higher end, like they are probably like bordering on a K-hole. Oh. And when you're like right next to it, like you're not gonna like break out and start talking to me about what's happening. No. Like you're so immersed. Yeah. So I always bring to them in the beginning like a little meditation that's talking about when or if you feel that resistance come, like breathe into it. Like use the music, you know, different pieces we brought into therapy, maybe like a sacred space that they can like drop into in their mind, you know, use these tools to like keep moving through, because this medicine is literally here to help you do that. But the mind is stronger than it. You know, your mind is used to resisting and clinching up. That's what it's going to try to do. So this is a great time to practice. Like, let's just breathe through it. Let's see what happens. I know David's right here. If I need him, like I can literally just do anything and he's going to be there for me, or the music will guide me or whatever it is. So I think noting that there is resistance, this is a given.
And then, yeah, exactly. Noticing there is, where is it? And then breathing into it. And it reminds me of yoga. If you're doing a yoga class and you're in, you know, pigeon pose and that shit burns like hell, breathe into it. You know, it's the same. As above, so below. The mind and the body are really, you know, one thing. So if we're experiencing, you know, mental, emotional pain, can we breathe into it the same way we breathe into pigeon pose in yoga, for instance, you know? Yeah. And, yeah, I think that's really profound. Again, giving people the tools and helping to give them confidence actually in their ability to go into those contractions, into the pain, into the trauma, because it's us running that is making it so painful, bad, and scary. And it's counterintuitive. We think, oh, I have to escape this pain, so let's get out of here, let's push it down and hope it never comes up. Right. And this is again the opposite path, which is actually you're going to turn towards it and go directly into it like a gangster and heal yourself. And that's the thing, that's the hard part. But again, learning how to breathe into these things, breathe into the stories that are causing us pain, because you can't let them go until you fully inhabit them, really, until you fully accept them as they are right now. Then you can start to play with stories and move beyond the ones that you're currently living in. But again, it's about breathing into it, spending time with it, breathing spaciousness into your experience, into our experience. And again, this is especially useful for painful experiences, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Can we use the breath as a tether back to some ground, to some peace? Use it as a tool.
Yeah. I was thinking earlier about rites of passage. And I think it like weaves perfectly in here. Like in my experience of rites of passage, they bring up pain in the body, old traumas, you know, different things like this, psychological discomfort where I'm just like ruminating on a certain thought or belief about myself or others. Yeah, I think this has been talked about a lot, right? Rites of passage are really missing from our culture. And it's the process of like going into something difficult and being in the discomfort as a way of healing and moving through it. I think the other piece too is important is with community, like being seen in a rite of passage, right? Like boys transitioning to men or grieving the loss of a parent or a loved one, or like, it's not just enough to like do it on our own. And I think it's even harder to try. I was like writing about this recently of integrating in community or with others, or even just with one other person, like sharing with them what you've learned, what you're changing, what you're doing. This so much more deeply ingrains it into your being, right? Rather than like, I can do this all on my own.
And I think that part about being seen is huge. And that brings me to my personal experience with like music festivals. David is a long-term burner at this point as well. We both went to Burning Man, not together, but we were there. And there's something that I find is so healing about dance, about like raw, authentic, unedited self-expression, and being seen in that, and then being held in that, and having, you know, your heart on your sleeve be seen by others, and they don't kick you out of the tribe for that. They don't say, oh, that dude's weird, let's not hang out with him. At a festival or a good one, everyone's on the same wave. Everyone's having a great time dancing, and it's so beautiful to see everyone's unique expression of themselves. And I think a rite of passage is the same way. When you're really in those transformative experiences, being able to be seen in this new version, as you shed your skin and you open up, can you be seen so that people recognize you as something different? Because I think that our social relationships are actually a lot of the time unconsciously creating our experience of who we think that we are actually. So for instance, you go home to visit your parents, a lot of the time you might feel like you did in high school because they treat you like that. And all of a sudden you step back into high school. Me, I haven't been in high school in like 12 years, but it's because those social relationships are sort of kind of chiseling our own experience of who we are. So when you can have community witness you in this new version, it becomes real. You don't go back to high school Duff. You know what I mean? You're in this new form, and people get to witness that. And then again, there's something so healing about sharing who you are authentically now and having that be received. I don't have to hide. I don't have to convince people. It's just me. And it's just so liberating.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing about Burning Man is how I notice I start feeling the longer I'm there, which is just so much more authentic. It's like cleaner and clearer and more playful. Like, I mean, my ability to just connect with anybody in a playful, funny way that doesn't seem as easy for me, like in the 4D world, in the real world, you know. There's something about that space that like invites an open playfulness for me. I've been trying to integrate that since we got back. Actually, I think it's been working really well, but it's been like, so I was like talking to my therapist about this, and he's like, how are you going to integrate that way of being? I'm like, you know, I think I want to be more social than I have been. You know, having 2 little kids, it's been tough, but now I have some ability to like have my own schedule, go out with my wife, go out with friends, like kids have babysitters. We can do this. Hosting people, so like designing experiences for people around me and like giving them a certain experience, like that gives me permission to have fun, to watch them, you know, to care for them in a way, but also do what I like, because I'm not going to like give them an experience that I'm not also going to enjoy. So there's like some kind of like flexibility and playfulness that I'm allowing to come into my life that, I don't know, in other times it doesn't feel as accessible. And Burning Man is one of those places where it's like a bomb just gets dropped on me of like, this is possible here. And then I'm like, but this is possible anywhere. So it's just been like a daily practice of like, bring that back in, like be playful with the world, be playful with others, like say hi, fuck around, you know, in a nice way, but like be playful, be authentic, let it go. Don't hold it tightly.
Beautiful. And I think, again, I heard this thing, I think on Instagram, but it was like, you can view the whole world as a festival. This whole life is a festival. And at music festivals, especially the Burn, it's about authenticity and expression and not holding back. So that example you used as far as like saying hi to somebody, you have that impulse to say, oh, you're beautiful, or like, oh, I love your jacket. We have that impulse, but a lot of times we're like, oh no, but it's not the time. Or what if they don't like me? What if, we have this second guessing, which is actually contraction. It's fear. And we can choose like step by step, decision by decision, to lean into love instead of choosing to lean into fear and behave. Because that's the thing. If you act from a place of fear, you're actually strengthening it. You're making it more real. Oh yeah, I have to be afraid because what if they reject me? No, that was a good idea not to say hi. And this is all really unconscious processing. But if we start to, again, choose love, and it really can be binary like that, where you're either choosing fear or love in any little decision. The more you step into love, it seems like you're stepping into new timelines where like not just your life gets better, the world opens up for you. Because you're saying yes and acting from that place of love and actually strengthening and nourishing your experience of love in this life. And that's the thing. We live in such a contracted, fear-based world. In any direction, there's people afraid of all sorts of things. And that's just the really the field we're living in right now of the mass consciousness of humanity. We're caught up in, well, the Buddhists would say, a delusional experience, a delusion that invokes fear. And again, if we're going to go back to emptiness, we could say that everything is empty of inherent existence, in the sense of even your sense of self, the sense of what the world is and what it isn't, the narrative of your life and what it's not or what it is. It's all empty, in the sense it's all actually made up in your head. And at that point, again, what do I want to believe? Recognizing some stories lead to fear, contraction, isolation, separation, and some stories lead to unity, connection, confidence, empowerment, love. And what do we want to choose? You know what I mean? Recognizing, again, it's all made up. I repeat, it's all made up. There's nothing you can come to that is going to be the really real reality. Even the notion that there's a real story, a real way that the world is, a real sense of self here, that's actually just a story as well. There's a story that there is no story. Interesting. Okay, so what happens if we recognize that that's what we're living in? We can step into emptiness of, oh, they're all stories. Okay. What do I want to choose? Do you want to choose fear? Because you can. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Or you can, again, lean into love. And that's what a festival helps with. It's sort of like a pressure cooker where you see all the ways that you're maybe not free, especially the burn. You know what I mean? It's so intense, so much energy. It's like you are getting cooked, and you're seeing, again, because those experiences, I mean, just like in life, are a mirror. And the people you experience are a mirror. And they're showing you parts of yourself. And you get to choose, again, how am I relating to these things that come up in me? Fear, resistance, or love, acceptance, openness. And then just, again, asking the question, what's the outcome if I choose fear? And what's the outcome if I choose love? And then applying that to life. Where am I not free? Where is the pain? Where is it all coming from? What's the source of the suffering?
Yeah. And it takes a maturity and skill to be willing to go there, right? How did you get to the point of being willing to go towards the discomfort, be in it, feel where does it start?
Great
I'm
question.
Curious, like a rite of passage kind of conversation. Like maybe it's not I went to Sweat Lodge when I was 13 and that was the transition, but I'm sure there were moments growing up, is there one that stands out?
When I wanted to lean into pain. So I had a tough childhood emotionally for various reasons. It's just kind of everybody has, you know what I mean? Especially in our culture. But I had a lot of ingrained pain, and I'm also a very sensitive person. So it's sensitivity is kind of, pros and cons to that. You feel the joy, the love, the connection deeper, and you also feel the pain more deeply. So pros and cons. I wouldn't have it any other way personally, but being very sensitive to suffering and pain, physically, emotionally, spiritually, eventually it dawned on me where I was like, wait, there's no escape. No matter what in life, there's going to be pain. I was like, fuck. Do I just avoid, endings and death and feelings of lack or failure? Or do I move directly into that shit and just fucking eat it? Because you can. And what happens when you shift from running away from pain to running towards it is you become a fucking tank, like physically, mentally, emotionally, because you're learning the skill of how do I handle this intensity? How do I handle this pain? How do I deal with this suffering? How do I get in there, understand it in a way that leads to just a better life? So for me, something dawned on me. I want to say I was probably in middle school. I was like, wait, there's no escape. There's no escape. And this aligns with actually one of the marks of existence in Buddhism. So in Buddhism, there are 3 marks of existence we can never escape. So the first one is impermanence. Everything is coming and going. The second one is suffering, that there is suffering always. And the third one is no findable self. So these are things that we can never escape. And when you realize the truth that there will always be suffering, you can stop the futile attempt to avoid it. You can stop the futile. It will never happen. There's no amount of money, there's no amount of experiences you can do to avoid suffering. And this seems kind of like a wet blanket at first. It seems kind of like a bummer. But actually, when that insight sinks, you let go of the expectation that you can avoid suffering. And you stop resisting your suffering when it arises. And you're like, oh, here it is. And it starts to get extremely workable. And again, because I'm not looking the other way, I'm so intimate and in relationship with my suffering that you just learn the skills necessary for how do I hold this? How do I finesse this? How do I listen to this suffering so that I'm not just being, thrown around by it? And I think that's something that a lot of people could really benefit from, is understanding there's no escape. There's no escape. It's always going to hurt. So guess what? Instead of avoiding the suffering, let's learn how to work with it.
Yeah. I'm this client that I used to work with came to mind. When we started working together, she was probably like 7 months pregnant. And the idea, right, we're going to work together through the pregnancy and then into postpartum, like on one of her many supports. But I remember at some point, we've been meeting for a few weeks. I'm getting to know her and how she, responds to me, basically our relationship and therapy. And I go, yeah, how are you feeling about the birth? Like what's coming up? And the first thing she said is like, yeah, don't die. I was like, whoa, okay.
Wait, she said don't die.
Yeah, that was like her inner voice saying like,
oh,
what do I feel about having this child, like birthing this child? Like, don't die during the birth.
Valid.
I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, very valid. And I think a lot of women have that fear because it's such a medicalized experience now. And granted, there's so many ways to give birth, and thank God for that, because it allows a lot more people to survive, babies, moms, everybody. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was like, okay. When she said, I'm like, this is like, let's work on that. Right. Mm. That seems like important. She's
the
like,
fear of dying during birth.
Yeah. I'm like, that was and she kind of started to write it off and like, well, it's kind of like hyperbole. I'm like, well, that's the first thing you said.
Yeah.
That's important.
Right.
We did a bunch of different things, but within like a month, and now we're like in the window of like, it could happen any day. Birth could happen any day. She's like noticing, she goes, I went from like, don't die to now, like, I don't even know if I want an epidural. Like, I think I can just ride this out with meditation. Like, I just feel, and I was like, that's fucking awesome. That is awesome. And like, we were able to use that in the postpartum throughout all kinds of other challenges to be like, you did that. Like, you went from the ultimate fear as a human and ego to die, basically, to I got this. And like, I can't say like I did that for her. I just like created the potential for like, what about this? What about that? How do you feel about other hard things you've done? And that was it. Like, how close can she get to her discomfort? Yeah. And then also for me, like, how close am I willing to like let her go towards discomfort? And that's like a big part of being a parent. Yeah. Like letting your kids have their struggles and suffer to the degree that's safe. I'm not going to let them be in danger of their life. But like my son, he's just climbing on fucking everything. He's nuts. Like from the time he wakes up until the time he goes to bed, he's like going, and it's so cute. And he's he's a good spirited, like happy soul. I don't want to like get in the way of him doing that. And sometimes it's like, we got to get in the car seat, dude. Like, we got to get to school. I've got a client. Like, the real world is calling too. So like balancing that need to give him space to like have his struggles and work through them on his own, and then be like, yo, you got to be along on my journey too. Yeah. And that the same thing is happening with my clients, and the same thing is happening for myself. Like it's all the same, being close to discomfort, working through the difficulty. When you have the tools the language understanding of like what is actually happening when you do that, it makes doing difficult things. It makes facing suffering possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So when we are in an experience of suffering, that's where the rubber meets the road, because we can talk and use all these fun, concepts and understandings and have this really heady understanding about suffering, how to work with it. But when shit hits the fan, then what? You know what I mean? When you lose somebody you care about, or when there's real fear of death, and it's extremely pronounced and strong, what do you do? And again, everything you knew is like, no, don't go in there. And actually, you got to go in there because that's where the freedom is. Freedom from suffering is going through it. It's almost like Dante's Inferno, where the way to get out of hell, you got to, unfortunately or fortunately, crawl through Satan's mouth. That's the only exit. The last place you're trying to go is actually through Satan's mouth. But that metaphor is so apt because we have to go through that thing that we're avoiding in order to be free from it. We have to go through it, experience it fully in order to change our relationship with it. We're, yes, this hurts, and actually that's okay. And that relationship of acceptance starts to really transform life from the inside out. Because again, it's the stories that we take as real are dependent on our resistance or clinging. This is another Buddhist understanding that the world arises as we experience it through certain conditions of the mind, specifically clinging to things that we like, trying to hold on forever, and pushing away the things we don't like. What's so fucking interesting about this is that, and you can see this in your own life, when you're really clinging to, say, a romantic partner, you love them so much, the relationship seems so solid, real. Your love for them, this idealized image of them, is objectively how they are. It's real because you're clinging so hard. And interestingly too, the trauma in the past becomes experienced as real because we're resisting it so much. And I think a beautiful example that I always bring up is our resistance of death and what happens when we resist death. So first I want to say death is a concept. It's never been here, never will be. It's an idea in your head. All there is this. Give it whatever name you want. And a lot of people call it life. And when you create life, when you say this is life, I'm alive, there by default has to be a death. And actually too, what's interesting is the whole ego structure, the separate self that we experience as who we are, is actually dependent on a resistance of death. So when we are resisting the end of this mind and body, we are actually solidifying that this thing called death is real. And by default, if this thing called death is real, there must be something also real here that could die. So all of a sudden, you're actually reifying to make real. You're reifying death, and you're simultaneously reifying the separate ego, making it real at the level of your perception. What's so cool experientially is when you really get intimate with death, you crawl inside it and you start to just be extremely familiar with this concept of death. You stop resisting it. And when you stop resisting it, the solidity of this thing called death starts to become much more fluid and workable. Well, hey, maybe this isn't an ultimate ending like we've been conditioned to believe in Western society, or at least secular society. Maybe it's not the ultimate annihilation of what I am. Maybe there's other stories that are equally as real. Because again, it's the great unknown. It's the void. You really fill that void with anything your mind constructs. So, and interestingly, when we have a relationship of openness to death, of really saying it's okay to die, it's okay to end. Interestingly too, when death becomes looser, the experience of our ego, of our sense of self, starts to become looser, and I can start to play with narratives and stories where maybe I'm not just Ben the human being. Maybe that's only one story. Maybe I can also be an angel incarnate, and having that be equally as real, because again, it's all empty, it's all in your head. Be careful about the stories that you are feeding, because they lead to different experiences. So again, when we open to death, interestingly, the ego starts to open up as well, and we can start to really try on different identities because it all becomes fluid. And this is just highlighting ultimately the profundity of the nature of mind, of how we are constructing everything, including death or the lack thereof due to resistance and clinging. So this revolves around the core teaching of Buddhism, which is emptiness, dependent origination. Things arise dependent on certain conditions. And this brings me to an interesting point with psychotherapy, which is, so we came from a Buddhist university, and Buddhism preaches about enlightenment, the end of suffering. And that's a pretty profound statement. And for me, it's like, because my background is heavy in Buddhism. I just found it and I was like hella depressed at a certain point in my life, and this was a saving grace. So with psychotherapy, there seems to be some assumptions that are not questioned, as in this sense of self that I'm experiencing right now is objectively real and who I am. And let's just work on healing that. So from a Buddhist lens, they would say, actually, again, there is no findable self here. Anatta is a mark of existence, that there is no findable self. So how does that change your goal in psychotherapy, your pursuit of healing, when, for instance, the self that we're trying to heal isn't actually even real? So I say this as a means of really wanting to open a question of, what are the limits of the current Western psychotherapeutic paradigm?
A lot.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about it a lot. And trying to, like, in these early days of having my private practice, consider what are the traps I'm trying to not fall into, that maybe I've already been taught, as far as you got to be in an office and it's got to be a 53-minute session. It's got to be this and that. And, already I'm operating outside of some of those pieces because I'm like, this doesn't work for me. So yeah, do I see clients in an office when they want to? Yes. But I'm always pushing, like, if they're open to, like, get out in nature, go for a hike, do a longer session, doing the, like, ketamine assisted sessions. Of course, that's within its own, like, framework, and it's like above board. But even within that, there's a lot of space to operate it and do the way I want to. Like, I pick the set and setting, and I'm holding that space, and I'm bringing in, like, music and other kind of sense driven pieces for the client. None of those things were taught to me in school per se. I mean, they were touched on, but a lot of it's just intuitive in that way of, this makes sense to me. This would be helpful for me. I'd want to come into this space and, like, have a journey, and I'd want to come back from my journey in this kind of a place. So I think, limitations are these, like, tight boxes that the psychotherapy world is operating in, of, like, well, I'm a DBT therapist, or, like, I do this style. I'm an IFS therapist. It was always interesting when I hear folks, like, lead with that. And I'm like, I say I'm a contemplative therapist, but then I quickly say, which means I am creative and I am intuitive in the way I work with a client. Like, I might have a scaffolding and a model, and certainly, like, even, like, the idea of a treatment plan, I'm kind of like, yes, I have one, but it's more of, like, this constantly evolving arc of, like, they have goals, and my job is, like, help them move closer to those goals and notice when they're moving away from them. That can happen in any way that needs to happen, and I try to move away from just these very, like, structured, result driven approaches. So in some ways I can't even speak to, like, how boxed in it gets, because I'm trying to not think about those ways and learn them. So I have to unlearn them.
Exactly. So again, psychotherapy, there's a lot of, it sort of mirrors the medical system, which is like, okay, you have a diagnosis, we have a treatment, we're going to give you that treatment. It's very linear, very masculine, very, just sort of protocol based. It can be very sterile in that sense too, where the mind is an organic, infinite thing. It's profound, and there's so much diversity in the mind, and there can never be one protocol that's going to work for everybody. So I like that you said creativity is an expression of the contemplative psychotherapist, because that's really what we do here. We're like, actually, I don't know what to do in this situation. Like, again, somebody else, the client is the expert on their experience. I'm just here trying to, kind of understand what's going on from my perspective, and I'm going to do the best that I can do to help them, again, like you said, get to where they want to go. And what's fascinating for me as, a lifelong really student of Buddhism at this point, I honestly wouldn't even consider myself a Buddhist. It's just a tradition that has gotten me into the coding of experience like none other. I would say, how do you try to sell somebody on something that they don't know that they want? And when I say that, it's like Buddhist enlightenment. Trust me, you're gonna want it. And at the same time, when people don't even have that goal, I don't even want to be free from the cage of self. Maybe they don't even understand that it's a cage. Maybe we assume the suffering we're experiencing is just the way that things are. and I just have to cope with life. And I'm here to say that I think that that's bullshit. We don't have to cope. We have to understand the mind and go into these unapproachable subjects. Like, am I real? Is this real? What do we mean by that? These are valid fucking questions. We just assume, yeah, this is real, of course, because I'm experiencing it. It has to be real. Are you sure? Have you ever had a dream that you wake up from? How real was that? So again, I think that for me, and it's like, again, I think there's different expressions of the divine that are trying to live different lives through all of us. So it's not a better or worse. For me, it's just firsthand knowing the freedom that comes through asking these questions and coming to these conclusions on your own is profoundly enhancing to life. And it just makes so many things better. Your ability to get out of your own way, to trust yourself, to express the archetypes, the images coming through you. And it reminds me too, where Buddhism is not a belief-based tradition. There's a line, a phrase from the Buddha himself. I believe it's Pali. It's ehipassiko, which translates as "come see for yourself." This is not a belief system. Just understand how the mind is constructing in deeper and deeper and deeper ways. How the mind is constructing. How could we be the creators of everything we're experiencing, and the depth that goes. And that's really the crux of Buddhism, which is like, again, you're getting into the coding of experience. You're not believing another belief system, because honestly, that's another, fabricated and then projected story. This is understanding that it's all fabricated and projected. And in a sense, science, you could say, studies the world from the outside in, and meditation and certain traditions study it actually from the inside out, where I'm studying this world at the level of my own perception. And again, it's a different angle, a different path that leads to profound freedom. And again, a lot of people don't even know that it's possible. And this is part of the Four Noble Truths. So the Four Noble Truths, if I remember them correctly, you might remember them as well. We start with, and this is one of these are core tenets of the Buddhist tradition. The first noble truth is that there is suffering. Suffering exists. Okay, so we need to understand that. Again, suffering exists. It's real. And then, quote unquote real, whatever that means. But second noble truth, there is a cause of suffering. There's a reason why we're suffering. Okay, that's good to know too, definitely. Third noble truth, it is possible to actually end your suffering. And then the fourth noble truth, there is a path to walk that will get us to the end of our suffering. And just understanding, again, the Four Noble Truths. Again, we're just going to say suffering is real. There's a reason we suffer. There's a way to end suffering. And there's a path that we can walk that does that ends our suffering. So if you take that to heart, it's pretty profound and dramatic. We're like, wait, this whole time I've been getting wrecked by life, and there's a way I can end it in my suffering? Like, that's legit. I don't think people believe it, to be honest. I don't think people believe it. If you believed it, you would dedicate your life to it. And that's the thing. I was so depressed and desperate. I was like, anything. Give me anything that fucking helps, and we'll just try it out. And like, the meds didn't work. The psychotherapy was helpful, but there was still something in me that was like, it doesn't feel like enough. And Buddhism brings you to these dramatic understandings about life and experience and perception. And again, sort of in totality, it gives you the reins over your experience, where you get to choose the world you're constructing. And when you recognize that, again, it's a lot of responsibility, because also your suffering is in your hands due to my story. How am I choosing to relate to life? And yeah, so basically just bringing it full circle, let's just put it like this. The goal of Buddhism really is to end suffering. We could briefly just say that it's to end suffering. And as therapists in the mental health field, working with people who are suffering, doesn't it feel maybe like we should pay attention to this 2,000-year-old tradition that has kind of seems to have figured it out, actually? Yet here we are trying to figure it out, and just maybe this is some, Western white mechanism of mind where we don't believe somebody else could have done it. We don't believe that they actually could have solved suffering. That's just a myth. That's a story. And I'm here to say that's, it is a story. It's a story that leads to the end of suffering. And I think that for me, it almost feels like something's obviously missing when we're not integrating these traditions of understanding the mind and pragmatically applying it to dramatically change our experience for the better.
Takes a lot of work. I think I lived, I was trying to like remember when the thought occurred to me that if my life felt like it was going bad, things were hard, it wasn't a reflection that like I was a bad person or I was doing life wrong. That like, so I was attached to the idea that like, well, I'm suffering, I'm struggling. So therefore like there must be something wrong with me. Like this was like a story that like crafted most of my life until I don't really know when it shifted. It's sometime close to finding like Buddhist practice. And then like sitting in long, like long retreat, meditation, Vipassana was like, oh, I'm not that. Like that is my experience, but like that doesn't say that like I'm doing life wrong. Like it might be an indicator that I'm resisting. It might be an indicator that I could choose a easier path or a path that's more suited for me. But I was like seeing it as like a moral or like a sinful sort of like
pathology, pathologizing.
Yeah, exactly. I see it so much with my clients. And it's like, it's one of those things where we want to be like, oh, let me tell you what I did. But that like with a child, like that doesn't work. Like it's just telling them about the fact that there is a way to get to where they're trying to go in a way that lands for them, which is different for every person. So like I'm having to get to know them and what is working to like offer those insights or inquiries or practices so that they can, move towards basically liberation. Yeah. And I believe like liberation is possible because I've done it myself in moments or for periods of time. And then things like solidify again. And then I have practices to open them up again. So like, I know it's possible because I felt it. And the reason I keep going down this path is because it's the only way that I've found so far that keeps opening me up to more liberation and more peace in my being and like my whole universe.
And we just so people can maybe taste a little bit of the freedom we're talking about, the freedom beyond the conceptual mind, I think asking the question, who are you? What's going on right now? Beyond the stories, beyond the concepts, beyond the narratives of what's going on. Come back to that place before language. Just for a second, who are you before language? What is this place before we put words to it? And you can start to tap into really an experience of emptiness where you can't say. And that's what's here. What happens to the stories that cause you suffering when you can melt them into the void whenever you want? When you recognize that they're stories that are fabricated. That's the word the Buddha used, is fabricated. It's built, it's constructed. Doesn't mean they're bad. But let's just recognize that some of these stories, again, lead to a lot of pain and suffering. And some of these stories lead to openness, love, and connection. And really, the choice is yours. And yeah, I guess we'll wrap up in a second. This has been a great conversation. I'm curious. So you're doing a private practice. Do you accept insurance or?
Don't accept insurance right now.
Don't accept insurance.
Although I did learn about something interesting as far as helping folks find their like out of network benefits. And there's some different companies online that basically as a clinician you can subscribe to, and then you can like point your clients towards, and they basically look at their insurance and say, oh, you can get up to this much out of pocket. And then as long as David sends you a super bill, you can get reimbursed. I haven't really messed with it, but I know it's possible. But yeah, otherwise private pay, and within reason, like a sliding scale for folks. I really don't want to deny somebody care if like I feel like and they feel like we're the right fit to work together. And then doing one-on-one talk therapy, men's groups, couples, and then the one-on-one ketamine assisted sessions.
And that brings me to actually a point that I wanted to touch on with you, which is, what is the place of psychedelic substances and psychedelic experiences in therapy?
I mean, personally, they're completely intertwined for me, like for my own personal path and way in. I don't feel like that's true for everybody, right? And I'm going to like explicitly say psychedelics aren't for everyone. Yeah, everybody says that, and they should, because they're not. For folks that they are a fit, where there's like a natural curiosity, and we know there's not some like serious contraindicator where, history, I'm not even gonna say science, but like history says if you kind of have been living life this way, or like things feel really difficult psychologically in these different ways, probably introducing like a mind altering, reality shifting experience might not be helpful. Although it's to be determined. In some cases they're saying in some cases they're saying it might be helpful. So not my realm of expertise, but I think it could be quite helpful. I think whether it's, you know, on your own, whether it's like with a clinician or with a facilitator that's, you know, I would say trained, but I don't even know what that means right now. I know there's trainings. I think like well vetted, that you trust, that you have a relationship with. It's not just like somebody random that you found on the internet. There's enough people out there who've been doing it long enough now that if this is something you want to do, sit with a certain medicine, you can find the right experience.
Yeah.
I know that that's possible. So, you know, right now I'm working with ketamine with my clients, and I found it to be super helpful, just allowing them to like get into deeper layers of their own psyche and experience. And then we come back, and even within that journey, as they're like on the tail end, like start integrating what's happened.
Yep.
It's one of the things I really like about that medicine, and that it's not so discombobulating as like a large psilocybin, ayahuasca, even DMT dose. It's in a way like gentler, in a way less disorienting. At least like when you're in it, it's disorienting, but like quickly that can subside, and you start to put the pieces back together. So I think it's for the people who want it, who are curious, who are a good fit. I think this is a major tool to be considered, and it has been for a long time.
I think we'll look back on this time and realize psychedelics are like one of the profound keys that is going to transform collective human consciousness. And I think, and that's obvious. If you've ever taken a good dose of psychedelics, it's obvious. It changes you permanently. And for me, psychotherapeutically speaking, it's like psychedelic experiences seem to create more malleability and flexibility in our stories. When you could say you're locked in a certain story, a certain experience of yourself in the world, it's a story that there's so much like tightness around. It's just the way things are. And then you get, again, high dose, whatever dose, ketamine, psilocybin, LSD, DMT, either oral or smoked, or otherwise could be boofed. I've heard that's pretty effective. But you get these hyper fluid experiences with these solidified structures in your psyche that are, again, being projected onto the world you experience, become malleable. And you get to choose, oh, wait, who do I want to be? What story do I want to believe? What worldview do I want to inhabit? And that's a result of having these really these experiences that induce this kind of neurofluidity, this malleability in mind and psyche. But it's a high risk, high reward game, because if you don't understand that, I mean, understanding emptiness is pretty useful because you get to choose. Again, recognizing there's no really real story. It's the ultimate permission slip to choose anything. Choose anything. And I think when you have that understanding, you can start to play with these images, these archetypes, these narratives and stories that are popping into your head on psychedelics. Could I be an angel? Can I recognize that and inhabit that story without clinging too tightly and becoming a neurotic, schizophrenic homeless guy? But because that's everyone's fear, right? With psychedelics, I'm going to go crazy. And the question is, what does that mean? Because you're going to inhabit a different story than the collective? Does that make you crazy? I think that's how innovation happens, to be honest. So there's such a profound potential in these substances to shift individual consciousness and then the collective story that we're living, because we need to understand that what we're living in is a collective story. And that story, again, it leads to certain experiences. It leads to certain values where, for instance, if I just think I'm Ben and I'm this body is dust, that's the end of everything Ben is, like, then I might as well just amass as much money, live a hedonistic lifestyle, smash as many fine chicks as possible, and we'll just call it a life. And that's a result of holding a certain story. What if I am an angel incarnate and my purpose here is to serve creation? And what if death doesn't exist and I actually know that? I inhabit that story. Where are my values? My values are in service to creation and everything that means. And it changes you at your core. So again, taking that step into discomfort, especially with psychedelics, like on a good dose, things are going to become very obvious. All the ways that we're not free are going to become very obvious. And that's a high risk, high reward scenario again, because how do you relate to that? How do you respond? Can you, again, have that warrior mentality and really rise to the occasion and go into that discomfort as a means of changing a relationship to it? Go into the stories, inhabit them, change your relationship to them, and then make them something different. So that's, I think, the potency in psychedelics. And again, I think that if people have been turned off by the psychotherapeutic system paradigm, it's probably because, I would guess, in part because of the sterility of it, at least with some people. A lot of people are like, this is just a fucking doctor, might as well wear a stethoscope. When the mind is so organic and free flowing, we need people that are organic and free flowing, and to open to the complexity and the infinite possibilities of the mind. That's where psychedelics come in. You open up to the irrational, the non-linear, the unpredictable, and that's scary for a lot of people, for sure. And that's also where the fertility is, where the potential to transform is really pronounced in that void. Yeah.
High dose psychedelics really give one the opportunity, that's one way of putting it, to like ride that edge of reality, right? Like the structured, rigid way that we've mostly have been raised to see the world, and the real reality of, like you said, nonlinear, basically like beautiful chaos, infinite potential.
The feminine.
Yeah.
We could call it.
I can certainly vouch for myself and a number of other accounts that I've like witnessed and helped integrate of like sitting on the edge of like sanity. Like I kind of had this choice point of like, I could kind of go back into my normal way of thinking after this, or I'm going to like spin off into insanity. And I'm like, but that can happen anytime, whether you're sober or on 10 grams of mushrooms. That's the insane thing that you never considered. That's actually crazy. Yeah. So, I will say, like, really briefly, there's a longer story here, but I didn't realize at the time, but was probably suffering from like some borderline OCD and like rumination and things like this for many years. And after like a couple like high dose psilocybin experiences that, were well held, on solo trips, but I had enough skill set of like working through trauma and pieces like that to go into it and come out whole again. Those like patterns and ways of thinking were just basically gone. And when they've showed up again, it's easy to be like, oh, that's the old way I used to think. I'm so glad I don't do that anymore. God, that was painful. And it was like, I didn't go into it to do that intentionally. If I had, like, who knows, maybe it would have happened immediately the first time. So I think that's my experience. I don't want to say everybody out there who maybe has an OCD diagnosis, go try this, but totally. Let's be open. Let's consider, do your research, see what's real.
And the thing is, like, there's a couple points here and then we'll wrap up. But again, the current paradigm we're in is like, let's prescribe them a pill, some synthetic derived bullshit that might help them. And like, let's look at like the effectiveness of SSRIs. Look at people getting prescribed benzos, which don't cure anxiety. They make it worse. If you've ever taken them, you know that. Let's just say the system's all fucked. And we have these medicines from the earth that we came from too, that are here to help us. And we have this societal conditioning where we reject that because we got a bunch of demonic reptilians calling the shots right now or something. I think that's a pretty valid explanation. Who knows? Or people just living in a delusion. That's also a valid explanation. People living in fear. But I want to also go back to what you said about being sort of walking this tightrope on the brink of insanity on a high dose psychedelic experience. And I think that's such an interesting concept, really, because when everything is empty and made up and a lot of people are living in a certain story where they have no problem going and sitting at a desk working 60 hours a week and barely seeing their family, that seems fucking insane to me. I don't know. That seems pretty fucking insane. Whereas the people that walk on the earth and talk to the trees and feel the messages on the wind, are those people insane? Because that seems pretty, like, I don't know, a great way to have a really deeply connected life. Like, really, when you talk about insanity, you can have this sterile insanity where your heart and soul is being, like, castrated. Or you can choose to be insane in love with creation, in an erotic connection, merging with this place and recognizing it's all empty. So what the fuck is crazy? What does that mean? What does that mean? Disconnected from consensus reality? Yes, we want to be able to connect with others that are living in consensus reality. But the beauty of psychedelics is you get to be fucking insane in your own way and let that soul shine. Let the gods experience this place through you, and don't second guess the stories in your mind, the images that come to you in meditation or on these psychedelic experiences. Channel these archetypes. Let the spirits live through us. Is that crazy? Is it crazy? That's what I'm saying. Like, because again, you could say we're all crazy here. We're all kind of believing made up stories. The key here to the freedom is not believing them. Recognizing that the story I'm inhabiting, whether it's deeply enchanted or very sterile and dry, is going to be equally made up. It's up to you. What made up story do you want to inhabit? And it's like, there's so much potential in that. And you can't get lost when you recognize it's empty. Because, okay, if the story you're believing is causing you to disconnect from people, I seem a little crazy, tone it down. It's a made up story. I think you probably want connection. So like, let's not just fuck that up. So do you see what I'm saying here?
Yeah. And remember too, like, yeah, ride the wave of whatever's coming up in those journeys. And this is my, I guess I would say advice, which I hate to give, but integrate with others. One person, a community, I love saying this because it's so true to me. Community is the medicine. Mm-hmm. It's like our oldest technology as humans. This is how we do it. This is how we survive, thrive, and grow. And, we look at our world right now, it's missing a lot of community.
Yep.
So if you go and do these, high level, high dose journeys, whatever you want to call it, try to communicate. Try to integrate with community.
Always.
Bring it out of your own experience, share it with others. Bounce it back and forth, get feedback.
Because it doesn't really seem real if it's only in your head. Like, you almost need to share it to others and, again, be held and seen in your experience for it to be real in a sense. Because otherwise it just floats in your head. This is also, why journaling is so important. If you get it on paper, it just seems more real. When I'm reflecting with others in community, I take this abstract idea or this, random chaos of experience and I make meaning out of it and it becomes solid. And this, and then we get to experience that story. So,
before we go, I got like a couple little gifts, for anybody who's listened this far, if they're down. If you go to my witnessingyou.com /Duff, there's a couple of different, playlists for different, ketamine journeys, pieces like that I use with clients. There's an integration journal, like PDF, just different tools, little things, musings of mine. And so just want to throw those out.
And what is the name of that website again?
Yeah. witnessingyou.com /Duff, DUFF.
Gotcha. And so the Duff is going to get them like a discount code on?
Just free access to it. If you've listened this far, you'll have the link and you go there and click the download.
And so you're also a practicing psychotherapist here in Colorado. How can people get a hold of you? How can people find you?
Yeah, my website, witnessingyou.com. It's great.
Instagram,
my socials. Yeah, Instagram, Redish, REDISH, D as in David, Redish, D. Mm-hmm. That's my social. And yeah, just you can find me, Google it, you'll figure it out.
My man, David, thank you so much for being on the podcast, bro.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
it's great.
Anytime.